advised everyone of that. But thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for one of our informational workshops. We're very excited to bring some additional information and hopefully some tools as you develop your programs locally and look to expand some of the opportunities that you have for youth in your facilities. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started, just to let everyone know, you have been let into the room muted, but when we get to the Q&A portion, you feel free to unmute yourself and raise your hand or use the chat function to ask questions. We have our two speakers this afternoon will be doing their presentations, and then we will open it up for questions at the end. So we do ask if you could just hold them until they finish their presentations, but very much do look forward to this afternoon's discussion. And so with that, I want to introduce our two speakers. They are from the California Prison Industry Authority Labor Program, and they're going to be speaking on a couple different topics this afternoon. One is on developing labor programs, and then the second is about what they put in place to be able to compensate the youth who work in their vocational programs. And so with that, I'm very excited to introduce to you Rusty Bechtold, who is the Assistant General Manager with the Workforce Development Branch, and as well, Mark Blasser, who is the Superintendent of the Ventura Youth Correctional Facility at DJJ, or retired, I should say, and now a consultant. So excuse me, Mark, but I did correct myself there. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to the two of you for this afternoon's discussion.
Great, thank you, Rosie. Well, my box says that you guys should be able to hear me, so we should be good on the technical side. Again, my name is Rusty Bechtold. I'm the Assistant General Manager of CalPI's Workforce Development Branch. Just to give you just a little background on just about myself, I have 28 years of correctional education and vocational training, both with joint venture and with CalPI over the last 28 years. So I've had the opportunity of working some of these programs from the front line to the administrative side. So hopefully some of my background can help some of you in regards to setting up some of these successful programs. I assume that most of you probably know something about CalPI, but I just wanted to start with a brief introduction if you have not, in regards to who we are and what we do. We're a self-supporting, customer-focused business. We have about over 6,000 approximate positions in over 100 different manufacturing, service, and educational training programs inside of the Department of Corrections and DJJ at the time. Some of those goods and services produced are sold only, all of our goods and services are sold only to government agencies through our penal code allotment. Our penal code does allow us to train individuals in these incarcerated settings for vocational education purposes. So we are allowed to do that along with our other enterprises that we have in manufacturing and other services. Our goal is to train incarcerated individuals with job skills, good work ethics, provide them basic education, and give them the job support in the community upon their release. We've had some CT programs that we started back in 2006. We started with a pre-apprenticeship program administering by journeyman instructors under a contract with the local trade laborers union. They provided their trainers and from their own training centers, so that way we could use the actual curriculum that the trade unions were actually using inside their training centers. We expanded our CTE classrooms after 2006 to include some tech areas such as the ones you may be familiar with the TLM coding program, and we also have a Autodesk certified training facility and offer culinary in one of our facilities under training already. Some of the things that I wanted to briefly talk about in regards to what makes CalPI CT programs different is that one of the things we can talk about in more detail, but is the agreements with outside organizations is one of the key rungs in the ladder in order to making our program successful. And that is setting up agreements with trade unions, community colleges, and nonprofit organizations that we've done in our CT programs that provide specific training to the incarcerated workforce. Direct employment opportunities who graduate and are released. So by developing those relationships that we have with those organizations, it creates a direct employment opportunity with a partner so that we don't have to locate and find some place for our trained workforce to go. One of the other things we pride ourselves on that these are true pre-apprenticeships. The time and experiences are applied to becoming a full apprenticeship upon release. So we want to make sure that we're very careful in regards when we set up these pre-apprenticeships, and with the aid of our partners, it allows us to recognize those hours upon the release, the fact that they can actually become full apprenticeships because they've already earned those hours. So you can see how important developing that relationship at the very beginning with that partner is so important, because by the time you get to the end, you want all of those hours to account for a true pre-apprenticeship. But so you'll hear some things in other locations of them having apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs, but you want to be very careful in regards to how that's defined, because if they're not, hours are not recognized to reach to the end, then that necessarily is not a true pre-apprenticeship program. The direct relationship with employers to provide them a well-trained employee upon release. So not only becoming in contact with your partner, but having that direct relationship with other employers out there is super important. Some of the things I wanted to talk about in regards to the main logistics, and I'm sure all of you have your own unique logistical concerns about in your area, in your counties, in your area, and Mark and I would be happy to talk about those individually, either within the time allowed today or if you want to call us back later. But I mentioned the first one is on my list is always those partnerships with the local labor unions. So for instance, we got started with local 185 laborers in the Sacramento area, and they became basically the grandfather of all of our CTE programs, where they were the first one to adopt our agreements and contracts and saw the importance of being able to provide their services, in turn be able to hire incarcerated workforce, because they got to train them all right out the gate. To give the real meaning to a pre-apprenticeship, we want to make sure that we would like to use the actual training center instructors. So the fact that the unions actually have a training center or a training instructor program, we're actually using those instructors right out of their training center to supply the curriculum, the most up-to-date curriculum, actual examples of what the training needs to be for their acceptance into the union. So they're constantly going back to their own training center, coming back to the classroom and providing the most accurate and up-to-date curriculum. So it's a very good and well-connected process to allow the individuals to get the most up-to-date and current information by hiring an actual union labor trainer from their training center to come on site and actually provide that level of training. That way that all the instruction that's provided is always current and up to date for what the union is going to be needing for those individuals to show up on the job site. One of the things that just in regards to logistics, because this question's come up before in regards to, how do the finances work for that particular process. The actual union itself pays for the instructor through their process, so that way they can recruit and hire their correct instructors. So they're paid through the trade union process. However, CalPI's CTE program is that we reimburse the trade union with those particular costs associated with that instructor, so that the union doesn't have any costs. It's a net zero gain in regards to coming out of the actual process for the union. But in turn, it's a win-win for them, because they get to employ a union member, and two, they get, the workforce and pre-apprenticeship coming out of it. And at the same time, we have a dog in the hunt, because then we're paying for their particular services, and they're able to recruit because they're able to get all of the special recruitment bonuses through the union, so they can get the right instructor. So it works out very well for us in regards to doing that, and we continue to use that and have used that since 2006. Our programs in the labor side, just to use that one as an example, since this is what the presentation was titled, is that we normally take an average of 6 months for the program. So I don't know how that works in regards to your particular area, but in most cases, it takes about 6 months for the union instructor to provide the level of training needed and the hours that they need in order to go out and be somewhat successful. Now, there's some exceptions to that based upon released and or the ability of the individual education-wise and that sort of thing. So there's always allotments made, plus or minus a month this way or a month that way. But we give that ability to the instructor in the union, because they're the ones at the end of the day that are going to sign off on that particular certificate and pre-apprenticeship hours when they go to represent them at the union or a job site. So that instructor has a lot of things on the line in regards to when they say they're ready to go out there in the workforce. So 6 months is usually our general rule of thumb that we take in order to get through the program. Placement by working within the union does help with that in regards to placing them on jobs. There are a lot of cases where the individuals will go out and find their own job, but either way, we try to support them with either the local union hall that you have in your area or whatever locally that you have in order to make that relationship work. But it does work in both ways in regards to getting them to an actual particular job site. And it just depends on your particular area and the relationships you build about how you go about doing that. One of the hurdles that we found that I wanted to share with you came in after 2006, but we kind of stumbled upon this and we found that individuals were getting through the program and actually making it out to a job site, and they're actually getting a job offer and they're ready to start work, and come to find out they never ended up continuing the process to go to work, and they were missing a couple key ingredients. And one of those was that they had to be able to pay their union dues, one, and two, that they had to have a set of tools to go to work. Now, we found it silly in regards to spending thousands of dollars on an individual and training them getting ready to work when a few $100s were holding them up from getting a meaningful job or employment with a trade union. So CalPI stepped up and said, hey, we've spent all this money, energy, and effort. They're standing at the finish line and here's this piece of plexiglass so they can't step through to get through to cross the finish line. So we stepped up and said, part of our program is that if you get accepted into a union job and you're ready to start the job and we get confirmation of that, we will pay your first year membership to those dues for your union. So that way you can go onto the job site to remove that barrier. And obviously those union dues vary anywhere from $300 to $1,000, depending on which union you're going into for the year. But after that first year, it's up to that member then to, earn their own way at that point, because now they've got the job. The second part that we noticed they were missing is, how does a laborer go to work without any tools? They had no tools. So we came up with a laundry list of tools that they would possibly need to go onto a job site. And when we got confirmation that they got an accepted job, they would send us notification and we would go and put a tool belt together for them, anywhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $500 a tool belt, and put together the necessary tools that they needed to start on the job and send it to them for their first day on the job. And we found that those particular two things at the end of the line there that helped them step across that finish line were super important, because here we put all that energy and effort into, training them and getting them ready to go to work. And then they were standing there without the ability to pay for their union dues or to have a set of tools, even the basic tools of a hammer and a square, to go out there and do some basic work in regards to that union work. So those are some of the hurdles. The laborers is a great entry point, has been for us for a while in regards to other trades. We have seen many individuals and success stories in CalPA that have started in the laborers and at the end ended up being a full apprentice in the carpentry or electrician or plumbers or a number of the other different trades in regards to them. It was able to get them onto a job site, get them exposed to all kinds of other things, had the qualifications, was able to be entered into that particular process. And next thing you know, they took off on the construction trade in all different sorts of shapes and sizes, after they've gotten into that particular field of work. One of the other things that we've tried to apply here in the labor side and most of our CT classes is that we want to apply them real life work. And so one of the things I would recommend in regards to setting up a program is the ability for them to not only have the traditional vocational training in a classroom, but to also have the ability to go work on real life projects. So for instance, if the laborers are pouring concrete, for instance, they may pour several concrete pads in the back and jackhammer them up and learn the pieces of equipment. But what they really want to do is we want to take them and actually put them on a project where they're actually pouring real slabs, real sidewalks, real foundations, those sorts of things that are going to stand the test of time to go out there and actually be used. you would be amazed at how much more pride that the participants have in their work when they know that something's going to be part of something of that particular location, institution, or building for a very long time. And having a a instructor from the actual trade unions there on site, you're doing all the work that's going to be, absolutely above board in regards to the quality of work that's going to be done. We have not had any instances, the fact where we've had shoddy workmanship at that point. We've had some instances where it didn't turn out exactly like we wanted it to, and we needed to start over. But it doesn't mean the fact that you got to worry about, concerns about things falling apart and that sort of thing. But for the most part, you'd be amazed at the quality of work after they get to that certain level of what the work that they can do once you've allowed them to do that. And how we kind of wrap that up in regards to financing is that it's training materials like anything else. So if the fact that you have to buy a sack of concrete, some sand, and some gravel, those are all training materials that's got to be used in the laborers program anyways for them to train. So why not, come up with a, real life project for them to, work on and actually, leave some part of some real work there on site, and hopefully, might aid in some of your costs and some other projects that you've wanted to do around the space that these projects might be located at. So sometimes we get creative, sometimes things just fall in our lap, but I did want to bring that to your attention because I do believe that's one of the cornerstones that helps in our CTE laborers program, is by providing that instance. One of the things that I always get a kick out of is that in our laborers program, in order to find out what their mental fortitude is we'll actually have them dig a 2x2x2 square with a shovel and a digging bar, and just send them out there and see what they can do. And it's amazing to watch them hang on to a shovel and not really sure what to do with it, or a digging bar, or the fact that they worked 10 minutes and thought they were done, and trying to push them out of their comfort zone in regards to just doing that. But that's kind of part of our introduction into the system, to try to get to kind of know somebody, to know what is their mental fortitude. And I know that Mark has seen that firsthand at the youth facility in regards to making him dig that hole and seeing what they can do, and then see where we take them in the class afterwards. Have you seen, Mark, you recall all that, the digging of the hole?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. That's the first thing they do.
Yeah. That's their first introduction to an actual tool.
That's right. They can make it through that, they are on their way to the program, I think.
That's right. Read through my notes here. Kind of my final thoughts here before I would, hand it over here to Mark, so we can talk about some of the incentivized things that we do for our workforce. So in regards to working with the graduates and hours, the fact that the unions actually keep track of that is by having that particular relationship of those hours, and the pre-apprenticeship program to connect to the full pre-apprenticeship is, the main connection that we want to make sure we drive home with this. So in your particular area, we know that by working in Northern and Southern California, there's two different training centers that we work with, one from out of the Bay Area and one down in Azusa in Southern California in regards to the laborers. But your local trade union offices in regards to whatever's in your area are the best advocates that can be for your program, inviting them in and having that conversation. Especially when you start to set up the program and start to have some success, you want them right by your side in order to support the things you're doing and giving advice about, how to set those particular things up before they're released and working on a job assignment. I'm going to hand it over to Mark right now to give kind of a brief update in regards to what we've done at the youth facility in order to help incentivize the program and try to get interest into this particular set of skills, because sometimes it's not easy to try to convince them that they're going to have to do physical labor to actually earn some money. So Mark, I'll turn over to you to fill that spot in.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate it. As Rosie said, my name is Mark Blazer. I spent 30 years in the Division of Juvenile Justice and retired from there as the superintendent of the Ventura Correctional Facility down south. And in 2017, I had an opportunity to come back and participate in the integration of some very, very successful adult programs in Cal PIA the then general manager and then director was looking for somebody to help them bring those adult programs over into DJJ and adapt them to the DJJ population. So I've been fortunate enough to be involved in that since 2017. And there was, of course, a number of things that we had to consider in bringing those programs over because, as you know, juvenile placement, juvenile stays, juvenile commitments are significantly different than adults. And so when we looked at bringing all the programs that PIA did, the ones that made the most sense were the labor program that Rusty's been talking about and the coding program that they had established at San Quentin. And we started with those, and those seemed to adapt to the DJJ population the best because of our length of stay and the other mandated issues that the DJJ population has to participate in. For example, the things that you're going to have to deal with: high school, the special ed issue, whether or not they're taking in treatment and those kind of things. And so if they're going to full-time school and you introduce this CTE type of a program, you're going to have conflicting interests, and everybody's going to want the kid between the hours of 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. and you're not going to teach them anything really, really well. So when their education in DJJ was paramount, so that's what they did first. And then if they had their high school diploma or their GED, they qualified for participation in some of the CTE programs that we were introducing. But it required a significant investment up front to make sure that we had the physical plant, of course, the opportunity to integrate the program into the regular operations of the facility. And so we had to consider all those things when we started the program. But one of the things that we were fortunate about is DJJ already had a integrated behavior treatment model that they were implementing in the DJJ facilities that had a behavior management system with it. And so when we looked at bringing our programs over, they had already been working very, very hard to put together a system that everything that the kid does, everything that the kid participates in, will have a manifestation in their overall program, in their levels, and they call them level systems. And so to talk about a little bit more about how we integrated the incentives from PIA, I want to just introduce a little bit of DJJ's philosophy, because that's what we plugged into. So they developed this behavior management system, and everything that the kid does every day, the counseling they're supposed to go to, the education they're supposed to be participating in, the work that they were supposed to be doing, and their behavior in and around the institution, all of those things factored into their overall program. Everything played a part in what their level was. Their levels are A, B, C, and D, D being the lowest, A being the highest. What's significant about that is you incentivize everything the kid has an opportunity to do as their level goes up. So you're basically saying, hey, if you do better in all the things that we're offering, then you're going to be able to participate and do things that other kids may not be able to do because their level is different. So that's kind of how we looked at that level system and how the kids were participating within that level system. We said, okay, we're going to set a criteria for our programs where we're going to look for level A and level B youth, because they're doing the best program possible within the structure of the institution. And oh, by the way, not only will we pick those youth, we'll look at maybe paying them to go to the class. And so the institutions already have in DJJ a well-established ward benefit trust system and a well-established ward work pay system. So when PIA came in with these CTE programs, we knew that there was some competition in the institution for graduates, especially in the work in and around the institution, for canteen, for kitchen, for cleanup, for admin workers. There's so many jobs that DJJ worked very hard to create and support with the staff, and they attached some funding and some pay to those jobs. So kids naturally if they had the opportunity to apply for those jobs, they gravitated toward those pay numbers. And we wanted to make sure that the CTE programs coming in, coding and labor, were competitive with those programs in as much as being able to incentivize a youth's participation. So we decided early on that the youth would be paid to participate in these programs. And how that looks is based upon their overall level. The higher the level, the better the program, the more money that you make. And so DJ or PIA implemented a process by which a kid would come into the program meeting the criteria at level A or level B. But as we all know, youth in and around the institution have a tendency to make some mistakes, make some poor decisions, and get in trouble, and maybe their program level slips up or down. So subsequently their pay for the CTE program would correspond with their level of program in the institution. So if you're a level C, you make X amount of money. And if you're a level A, you make more money. So if you're going to the same CTE class and you're sitting next to a kid that's on your living unit and he's level A and he's doing a really good program and he's taking care of business, he's making 50 cents more than you are just because he's doing that. And I think that was part of plugging into the incentivization that, the incentivization of these programs and this work that DJJ was already doing across all of their other programs. So it fit nicely in what DJJ was doing. I was kind of surprised when we were talking with Rosie and a smaller group of probation staff. I remember talking about this pay thing and why it was so interesting to them, because I don't know that every probation department has pay numbers or pays youth for work. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, just to make sure you understand how it was set up in the juvenile justice system, is they actually identified all of these positions and they set this money aside and called it the Ward Benefit Trust. And what I mean by saying that is, we all have budget issues, we all have budget problems, but there's one budget item that superintendents can't touch, and that's the Ward Benefit Trust, because it is there to incentivize youth behavior through the jobs that you create in the institution. And they also get an opportunity to earn a little bit of money for when they go back out in the streets and when they get paroled, to be able to take a little bit of money out with them when they go. The way that works, in terms of, well, let's just say that the kids are in class, they go to class 22 days a month like any other kid would at school. And during half of those days, or he gets in trouble. And so his level changes from level A to level C. What we did is we allow the instructor of those classes to manage the youth pay in accordance with whatever level they were on for the longest period of time that month, that pay period. So if a young man worked 22 days for that month, or he went to class, or he went to coding for 22 days that month, and 8 of those days he was a level C, but the other amount of days he was a level A or a level B, he would get paid at the higher wage. If he was 12 days of that, he was a level C, then he would get paid at the lower age. It's pretty difficult to manage an adjusting pay scale like this on a day-to-day basis. What we found out was the accounting staff were begging us not to do that because of the challenges that they would have. So we had to kind of structure it around a more generalized way of being able to manage their pay based on their levels. And that's one of the ways that we're able to do it. And the kids understand it, and they're used to it now. The good part about it is, I think that when you talk about kids that want to participate in the program, is there's been many times when I see them coming in because they want to earn that money. And then after they're in the program, they start liking what they're learning. And especially when you're talking about youth, And, we all know they're impulsive and they don't make good decisions all the time, but you just get involved with maybe what's going to help me today. One of the things that these programs offer is through that pay and through that incentive is, hey, come and participate. And then you see many, many times, especially in our coding and our labor programs, the kids start to really develop a passion for what they're learning. And more, we had the labor instructors reaching out to local labor unions and letting them know we have a pre-apprentice coming your way. This guy's got our support. He's got some training. And there was all kinds of dialogue going back between the youth and the instructor. And the same thing for the coding. Youth were coming out, getting paid, getting positions that were consistent with some of the training that they had, that maybe in the first place they really went after it because it was paying a couple of dollars, but they found out that they really liked that, and they liked that and continued that after they were paroled. So that's kind of how we wrapped the pay and wrapped the way to incentivize those programs through pay into the existing DJJ institution. And I think that's pretty much all for me, Rusty.
Yeah, and to add on to what Mark is saying is that we incentivize that with the laborers program and the carpenters program, and we really did it for the same reasons, but we also pass that along to our other programs as well, into our technology, coding and Autodesk and culinary, where we still offer paid positions. And that item that he just said at the end in regards to incentivizing it and getting their nose underneath the tent and getting them started, that's what the pay did. But after that, the success and their interest and watching them succeed and being interested in an actual trade all of a sudden took over and took, yes, they were still getting paid, but I think that became second fiddle after a while, because they really started to enjoy it coming and going. So really support the actual paid part of it. I wasn't sure when I first saw that how it would work in certain areas, but I can tell you that, from our side of corrections on that side of it, really that incentivization of that particular gets them, the initial interest started. It's the short-term thing, but hopefully they catch on to the long-term thing right after that.
That's right.
One thing I forgot to mention in my last notes here is that just to kind of give you a picture of what, our current classroom size and the hours and stuff that they spend, so those individuals on the call have a general understanding. Normally, we used to have classes around 24 or 25 actual positions. We have found that to be a little excessive in regards to having a class with that many students in it and trying to manage them with, power tools and going all over the place and trying to, control them and doing on-the-site job stuff was just too hard to manage. We found that working with the instructors around that 15 or 18 individuals in a particular day is about the max that you want to get to in regards to making sure that you can do all the things that I've talked about. If they need to go off-site to do some work, if they need to be able to be supervised in different groups with, health and safety reasons for equipment, it makes it a little bit easier for them to do that. Right now, the structure is about 2 hours or so of classroom work. We don't like them to be in the classroom more than a couple hours a day. And then the rest of the remaining time is usually outside or doing something in regards to the actual lab part of their work, either through vocational training of learning how to do something, or actually going to the job side of what they're doing at that location of actual working. So yes, there is some classroom time, but the most of this setup time is outside of the class. If you're going to be a successful laborer or a tradesperson, you're not spending your time in the classroom. You're spending yourself outside with a little bit of training and stuff on the inside in regards to the classroom. I don't know how many times I've seen light bulbs come on in people's head finally to understand fractions when they're looking at a tape measure in a classroom and finally understand why instructor Smith wanted me to do a 1/4 inch plus a 1/4 inch, and all of a sudden they go outside and they're building something and they miss their cut by a 1/4 inch and the thing doesn't match up, and I hear them yelling at each other going, I can't put that together, you messed that cut up. So finally to see them a few hours in the class and then go apply that out in the field is really cool to watch. So we've kind of used that method, and it's not, I take that as but it's more of the union labor instructors want to take that approach because they feel like they get more out of that process from the classroom, and then switch it over to the outside work. That's all I had to talk about. I guess I could open it up to questions at this point, if anybody had any specific questions for Mark or myself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. A lot of great information. And so I would just invite anyone who has a question, you can either put it into the chat, or you can use the raise hand function, which you'll find under on the bottom of your screen under the reactions, I believe. So and just a reminder to unmute yourself if you opt to do that option. And I did have a couple questions, although one of them, Rusty, must have been reading my mind, because a couple of them were going to be sort of around the classroom style and the number of hours per day. So you covered that one, but we'll pause and just in case there are any folks that want to ask any questions, or I can certainly kick that off, but certainly want to defer to our audience.
Yeah, and you know, Rosie, just on that hourly thing, that's just a guideline per se, because we base our pre-apprenticeship on the number of hours that they're participating in the class with the instructor. So, you know, there's times where you get rained out and you can't have any class, and there's just so much class time that you can do, or there's you know, administrative things or security reasons why you can't hold something. So if you get 6 hours one day and only get 3 hours the next for all kinds of different things, the world doesn't fall apart because of it. It just, you have to realize we're building towards an hour. And so the less hours they have per day, the slower it is going to get to the end where they can earn their pre-apprenticeship.
Yeah. On that note, have you found there to be certain apprenticeship programs that are more popular than others with the young people?
Well, say Mark might answer that because he saw that firsthand.
Yeah, I think the labor program and the coding program. The coding, I would say, would be the most popular program in the institution, because they're learning kids versus adults, their skill set for learning coding and just computers and phones and, you know, all that stuff. They were a little bit advanced than some of the adult programs that had previously been opened up. In fact, when we first started opening up the youth programs, they were able to kind of show us that there were some security holes that we needed to patch up to make sure that our system was, you know, our system was definitely standalone and that kind of thing. But the kids love that coding stuff and writing code. They have minds that wrap around that real easy. And I'd say the labor program in DJJ was a very close second.
And we didn't get a chance to do the Autodesk at the DJJ yet, but that's in that same tech field where that has to do with drafting and AutoCAD and Revit and, you know, designing, you know, buildings and amusement parks and, you know, building parts for machines and that sort of thing. So that tech side is, it seems to be, you know, and it's a good balance, because obviously having two different individuals inside there, there's some people that want to go out, you know, and be outdoors and work and be physical. And then there's other groups that are more introverted and want to, you know, more interested in the, you know, video game world of, you know, tech writing, that sort of thing. So I think that's why I think both of those fields appeal, or at least cover the bases. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Oh yeah. And the hands-on portion of the labor, the kids love that, because not everybody's book smart. And we certainly have a lot of kids that are definitely good with their hands and take to that program very well.
All right, thank you. Well, the questions are starting to flow. So I'm going to go to the first one, which did not go out to everyone, but there was a question. How many different programs do you have running at once?
In DJJ?
Yes.
Well, for PIA and DJJ, we have 3 programs running in the northern facility and 2 running in the southern facility. So they're running simultaneously. One of those is Free Venture that we haven't talked about. It's separate and apart from the 2 programs we focus on, and labor and coding are in both institutions in the north and south.
And to piggyback on that, Rosie, on what Mark was also, I think, maybe touching on, was on the laborer side, we run them we run them individually in the laborers program, meaning that they can start in small groups. So if you started a group on this week, a couple of weeks from now, if you had 3 more, you could start them again. If you go on the tech side where you're doing technology training, you're dealing with curriculum, you have to start with one great big cohort and move through the entire program. It's hard to drop in people all over you know, a 60-day time period and have them keep up with the curriculum. So that's one of the pros and cons between, you know, laborer and tech in regards to the introduction of, you know, how many simultaneously are going on at the same time.
And this may be a silly question, but and maybe it's just very literal, when you say labor programs, is it a manual labor? What does that really mean?
So that's, the basic thing that they talk about is almost a carpentry work, but they can't
Okay.
go over a board foot. That's how the laborers union describe it. So they do all the groundwork and all of the work from the ground, underground, all the way up to 1 foot off the ground, and anything that gets over and above that, the carpenters union takes over after that. So in regards to their specific work, so they use laborers on bridges and flat work and building construction. We've had a lot of our graduates go to build Levi Stadium over there in regards to pouring concrete, and the laborer's trade is pretty wide in regards to laying brick to pipes to digging trenches. Again, all that flat work and iron work and stuff that they've been working on over there enters the laborers as well.
Okay, thank you. The next question we received in, with the instructors for the pre-apprenticeship, how much space did you provide? And did you provide the tools for teaching, or did they bring anything in?
CalPI provided it all. So the only thing that the instructors came in with was themselves and their teaching material or curriculum. So if they had a book or something of that nature, PI would buy that book and keep a set on hand. But if they had anything else additional that the union wanted to provide, then they would bring that in from an instructional part. And we would provide the tools. So we had a tool room of all the necessary tools that the instructor would need in order to do their proper training. And obviously, depending upon if I have 5 students or if I have 15 students, would vary the size of your tool room, because you wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity to, to be using the equipment.
So to piggyback on that, when we implemented a DJJ, what DJJ needed to provide was a physical plant for the opportunity for the kids to do the in-class learning that Rusty's been talking about, but also the outside work using some of the tools that is provided by PAA. And what we put the tools in was a Connex box, and we put it into about a 20 by 50 area, fenced that area in, and the kids, we call that the laydown area, and the kids can work inside of there with the instructor to do some outside work on a regular basis. The inside classroom was for the MC3 curriculum and some of the work that was being done and doing the training that goes along with the work outside. So PIA provided all that so that the instructor would have all of the tools necessary, both book learning and also the construction tools, to be able to go through that pre-apprentice curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we have places currently from a concrete pad with a white tent over the top with a classroom setting in it, all the way to a full-fledged classroom with projectors and HVAC units and that sort of thing. So we have a wide swath of experiences out there in regards to what they're working in. Also want to point out is that you have a laborers program that if you get into the trades, you got to realize they're trades, and there's many of our locations that started with a dirt and a tent, and now they have a full-fledged training facility because they use their training materials to build their own facility up. So they just basically built it themselves in regards to building their own little training center over a period of time. So it's almost a self-fulfilling, educational prophecy kind of right there.
Thank you. And before we shift, we have a few fiscal type questions, but before we shift to that, there was an additional question. In your program, do you offer OSHA certifications? And then the second part to that is, what certifications do you offer? Which I think you may have covered earlier, but we can.
Right. So we have an industrial safety and health 109.1. I think that's through the TPC course that we offer in CalPIA. And we ask all of our CalPI participants, all 6,000 positions, regardless if they're in our technical education or not. And it is a recognized OSHA training that we provide, that all of them have to take and pass and be part of that particular program. Now, there are other parts in regards to the union instructor that comes on site that also puts them through their own health and safety program, to making sure that they're signed off and documented on, making sure they know how to properly use the power tools and that sort of thing. So then we need to make sure that they're following that protocol as well. But we do have a TPC course of one of our many that we use. That's 109.1, I believe is the number, that we use as a basic starting off point on for health and safety that is connected to OSHA.
Okay, so now we'll shift a little bit to the incentive pay and so forth. The first question, did you devote accounting staff specifically for calculating youth timesheets? And then getting to the accounts, did each youth have outside bank accounts in the community, or did accounting maintain those in-house?
So within accounting, the existing accounting processes within the institution, staff has that as part of their duties. They integrate, in DJJ, it had a well-established process and a lot of pay numbers in the institution. So we integrated, PIA integrated with that. So the pay is being done by an accounting staff in the institution. It's being tracked by that staff, and anybody submitting a pay sheet for a youth would be able to go or would have would have an interaction with the accounting department. The accounting department maintain a bank account general for all of this money, but they maintain spreadsheets specific to each youth in the ward benefit trust account. So every kid that ever works has a pay number, and he'll have money associated with the account that we have that has ward money in it, and the amount of money that's his is in that account.
Mhm.
And when he gets paroled, or in this case, moves on to probation, that money is identified and of course given to that youth when they leave. It's also moved from institution to institution through accounting by way of the kid's name and YA number, and then they just move the money back into the other institution's trust fund, and it's held until the youth separates from DJJ. Did that answer the question, I think?
I think that it did. It sounds like it's all internal. So
Yeah, it's internal. Just one more specific thing about calculating: the instructor having a control over the youth pay. That's another incentive that the instructor for each class has. Obviously, if youth are challenging them in their behavior, you don't always have to go for the throat. You don't always have to go to fire them. You don't always have to say, the worst thing's going to happen to you. But instructors have some leeway over the pay that they're getting to encourage them and motivate them to increase their, to do better in class. So the pay sheets are submitted by the instructor to accounting, and usually accounting, unless there's a calculation problem or something that they don't see that's irregular, they're usually going to follow what the instructor is sending for that particular youth or that particular class.
Mm-hmm. So Rosie, that was what he mentioned before, the ward benefit trust.
Mhm.
They set up one ward benefit trust account at that location, and that's just one account that houses all the money. And then there's separate records that show that, hey, there's $50,000 in there, and that $50,000 is broke up between these 50 individuals, and here's what we owe them. So
Right.
There's no individual bank account outside. It's all done inside the department, state system.
Yeah. And to take that a step further, when I got my budget as the superintendent, a line item in my budget was the ward trust, and that money was identified particularly for ward program within the institution. And I had very little discretion over moving that money anywhere else. I could spend it as I wanted to for ward participation. I could have all kind of incentives out there and pay for bouncy houses or whatever fun things we were trying to get for them to do. But I did not have the ability to move that over to help me pay for something, a new sidewalk or something like that. That just wasn't allowed.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, I'll just throw out an easier number. So there might be in that account $1,000. 500 of that may have been earned by whatever, by a certain point in time by certain youth, and that's on some a spreadsheet, so to speak. And then there might be, sounds like a budget that would still have an existing amount that had not been earned yet by any particular youth that was available to be provided.
Yeah. I think I understand your question. What you have is you have your entire pay numbers, and you assume for your budget for the year, you assume that a ward is in those positions for an entire year. So that then you get budgeted for full participation, 365 days you're paying a youth. And of course, we know some of those programs go vacant, kids get in trouble. Those kind of things impact the money going out, but that's how you budget for that initially. Now, if you don't use all that money, you can move it over and you can use it to do some programming and for the youth inside the institution, but you can't move it into any other institutional operational problems. And then there's a separate line item that says, if you want to, there's a ward incentive system, and there's a line item that has a budget for that ward incentive system specifically for identifying ways to provide incentives within the institution and pay for those incentives so that you can motivate youth behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. But I certainly, if others have follow-up questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop something in the chat. So a couple other questions. It sounds like this question may have been answered because it looks like you use the same finance department or accounting at the facility. There wasn't a separate entity that you contract with to handle the funding, but there was a question about just the complexity if youth were expending dollars, like, at the DJJ store, or obviously handling restitution, and that may be a whole separate group of folks that we need to bring on.
Well,
but
I mean, when a youth go to canteen, depending on their level, they get to go to canteen with a different budget. The higher your level, you higher your budget. That's part of the incentive program. And so when a youth submits a canteen draw, they submit a whole sheet. It has every canteen item, what it costs, and the youth knows at the end of that canteen submission how much money they're spending. That goes from canteen to accounting, and that money is deducted from that individual ward's account on a bi-weekly, bi-monthly, however many times they go to canteen, and it's managed by accounting. They're quite busy doing that kind of thing. And like I said, there's a sole person dedicated just for that.
Okay. There was a question about, I know you mentioned the compensation and the incentive pay was based on levels. And so I don't know if there were necessarily hourly wages, because it sounds like youth are being, it's more of an incentive to participate in the programs versus,
it's
hourly,
Rosie. It's hourly, Rosie. Yeah. So for example, coding and labor are 6 hours per day, and you at $2.25 an hour if you're a level A. So you make 6 hours at $2.25 an hour over the course of a week, over a course of 2 weeks of that month, et cetera. So as you go, it reduces 50 cents for every level that you lower. If you're level B, then it's 175. And then if you're level C, then it's 125, that kind of thing. So, but it's paid hourly. And so if you're in class, and as I was saying before, if you're in class and you're not having a good day and the teacher has to send you back 2 hours early, well, guess what? Not only do you have whatever behavior that you did that may need to be addressed through the disciplinary process, you also will lose 2 hours of pay because you weren't there. And we tried to create it as much as we could, just like real life. That's, if I go home early because I'm getting in a fight with Rusty, he's not going to pay me. That's just the way it goes. So, that's real life. And we tried to mirror that as much as we possibly could within the pay structure. So.
Okay, thank you. Another question, how many years did it take to get to where you are?
Well, as I said, we were speaking for the integration into DJJ. We were fortunate, PIA was fortunate that DJJ had already been working on a new incentivized system through IBTM, through the integrated behavior treatment model that they were implementing. But for years and years and years, DJJ had established pay numbers and work. We recognized a long time ago that keeping wards busy and there is a very good thing to do. So we really looked in the institution for jobs for them to do and ways for them to get off the living unit and do things productive. And so we've had paid jobs in DJJ for a long, long time. What was new was this idea and concept of bringing all of those things together within the behavior management system and incentivizing them so you could actually make more money if you were doing better, or less money if you were if not. And so that was that was very easy for us to plug into when PIA started and implemented its programs because it already was there. But I don't think, and it's just guessing and understanding how institutions run and how people, I don't think it would be a too big a lift to establish that program. I think the big lift is going to be what jobs do you see in your institution that are independent of even CTE programs that you're going to pay wards to do? And do you have the staff available to supervise them while they're doing those jobs? Because they just don't go off on their own and do them. You have to have supervision. You have to have the custody things in place.
Yeah, on that note, do you find, and maybe it depends on the particular class, do you have to have extra staffing for certain ones, or just curious if certain apprenticeship programs require more staffing than others?
Within DJJ, there is no additional staff given to the labor program instructors. They instruct the kids as same thing as teachers, same thing as the plant operations staff. They have wards with them every day. So the instructor has, as Rusty said it, the good manageable population for that kind of a class is 15 and under. In DJJ, it's hovered around 8 to 10 for labor. So the instructor manages their behavior all day and of course has the tools to communicate if he's in trouble or if anything's going on. That's the same for coding in the north. In Ventura, there are females and males at that institution. And so when we set that program up, the DJJ director decided to assign an officer in that class because we were going to run it co-ed. And as soon as we mixed men and women together, or young boys and young girls together in a class, it became very, very important to make sure that the supervision in that class was appropriate, because we understand that anything that comes up around that, if somebody comes up pregnant or hurt or something like that of the opposite sex, then we're going to have some serious problems with the program. So that was the only additional resource we identified, and it was only because it was a co-ed class.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I think we've gotten to all of them that are in the chat. So if there's anyone who prefers the raise hand and be able to ask your own question, can certainly do so. If not, I know if folks had very, very specific questions, I know Mark and Rusty are very much open to us putting you in contact with them. So do feel free to reach out if there was particular areas where you would like a little more information, and we can help facilitate that, getting you connected. But we'll pause one last time, but certainly I know folks are busy, but do really appreciate all the information that you both have shared this afternoon. And we'll just do one last check. And Rusty, I'm sorry.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about, I didn't say it in my opening monologue there, but if people are looking for the success of this program, CalPI has plenty of research conducted in regards to our CTE programs, from a recidivism impact in regards to, not returning to custody and not returning to a life of crime and making more victims, is the fact that from our own study back in 2012 to our most recent study in 2022, we have some of the lowest recidivism numbers coming out of our CTE programs than most programs in the United States. So, about 7% is our recidivism in regards to those CTE programs, in regards to having that impact. And the most recent study from UC Irvine is only within 2% of that. So that 7 to 9% is some of the best numbers that you could hope to expect in regards to, if you're trying to sell this program in regards to what is the overall impact that you're trying to get from this and trying to fund it. By all means, you're more than welcome to tap into our resources with those studies to use in your particular concept statements or budgets or that sort of thing. So I want to make sure that you guys have access or need any of that type of help, because I can understand when you're out there writing your request trying to get funding is, we know what proof is in the pudding here. We're going to set up hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars for this and equipment. And if you got no proof, just a song and a prayer makes it pretty hard. But hopefully from, partnering with us and CalPIA and the things that we've gotten right and the things we've gotten wrong and the results of that can help, you guys can skip all over that stuff and go right to making it work right away.
No,
This-
appreciate that, because that was definitely why, we wanted to invite you to share your experiences today, to be
Mhm.
able to learn from you, so that we
Mhm.
could kind of maybe start a few steps ahead of when you started out. So definitely want to benefit from that, and certainly always appreciate when there's research attached to a program that's being implemented. So do thank you for reminding us that information is out, though. We'll definitely share that. And then there was one last question that came through. Is there a list of within the regions of California for the unions and trade associations that you're aware of?
We can get that for you.
Oh, great. And we'll
Yeah.
be sure to share that out to everyone.
Yeah. One thing I had, Rosie, just as, and this might be a topic for another day, but I have you and the rest of the people on the call that I think it really makes a good time to announce it, is I want to make sure that everyone knows in every county that the joint venture and the free venture opportunities that you can have at your institutions are now available to you in each of your counties. And if you're not familiar with that particular program, I would be happy to, at least myself, Rosie, to talk more about that. But that allows private industries and businesses to come set up their business inside your facilities and work and employ those incarcerated or youth offender that are on probation to work in an actual real life work setting, and in turn they're producing goods and services for their business. So there was recent legislation a few years back that came out that allowed counties to actually have their own joint venture, free venture opportunities. So if anyone's wanting more information about that later, Rosie, I'd be happy to talk to them about it. But I want to introduce another subject that maybe some of you weren't aware that you have that at your fingertips.
Yeah, to one more thing to add to that, Rosie, and we don't want to go off into this area, but I do want to say, I'm glad Rusty brought that up. But I can tell you that the single best jobs within DJJ throughout my entire career was always, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the free venture jobs that were offered. They pay, prevailing wage. They go to work every day. That was those kind of things. If you can develop in your institution, they'll be greatly appreciated by the population, and you won't have any trouble finding workers for it. For a very, very long time, those were the best programs that we had in DJJ.
Well, I'm sure we'll get some emails and requests for more information on that. I know that
AB 2012, I think, is what gave the authority for the counties, if I'm right.
Okay. Well, we are always looking to do more workshops, so do appreciate you sharing that information. I know, we're just trying to get as much information as possible and resources available as we look to develop our programs for the youth that will be staying at the local level. So really do appreciate your partnership and sharing your expertise this afternoon. There's some compliments there in the chat, so be sure to look at that. But do want to thank you both for your time this afternoon, and we'll looks like I'll be reaching back out to get some information on the joint venture and free venture program. So
and Rosie, you're more than welcome. For the participants, I see some questions over here. Please share our contact information with the participants. His emails and phone numbers are fine. So if they have something, they can contact Mark or I directly.
Great, I will do that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Have a good Friday, everyone.